Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, and welcome to Hug It Out America Radio. I'm Billy Park. I'm your host, where we shrink the divide one caller at a time. It's a pretty dreary Monday here today in Massachusetts, but we're happy to be on the road and on the radio today, talking to people and spreading a little love, understanding people. Today on the show, we got a friend of mine. Actually, I've never officially met her in person. We've talked through social media a lot. Her name is Marla Esta, and she is going to come on and talk about us versus them and getting rid of that, not on her watch. She goes all over the Northwest talking to groups, trying to get people to see common ground in each other so we can come together, get past all these political differences. So I'm going to welcome in. Before I do, I want to let y'all know a couple shows we got coming in this week. So we got on Wednesday, we have a guy who's an artist in Springfield area who actually uses art to get people out of the ghetto. And then on Friday, we have a guy coming who's a musician, owns his own music place on Friday. And his name is Mark Zeus, and he's going to play some music, some of his songs, and tell a little bit about being in the music business and his feelings. He's a great singer, a great songwriter, but I want to get Marla in here, see if I can do that real quick. So let me try that. Hold on just a second, y'all. Marla, you there?
Yes.
Sorry, still getting used to this interface. I have to do 3 or 4 different things at the same time. I'm like the cook, the chef, the owner, the dishwasher, and everything all in one. So
good luck to you.
What you say?
I said good luck.
Yeah, we're enjoying it. We've been doing it for about a week. Had a lot of great guests last week. I'm glad to have you on this week. Glad to finally meet you voice to voice at least.
Yes, me too, Billy.
We were supposed to meet. That never happened because I had emergency I had to attend to, but I've been wanting to get you on the show, and I know that you do a lot of bridging. I think the official term you call it is a bridger. I'd never heard of that term, but I think it's a great term until you told me about it. But Marla's just doing amazing things. Like I said before, she is provide through her seminars with a lot of go-to advice and steps to do that. I'm more on the streets doing it, but she's doing large groups and meeting halls and stuff. So, Marla, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about yourself and what you're doing, and then we can add some questions and stuff.
Okay, well, I actually would like to start with telling you all how I came to where I am today. And what happened is I woke up the morning right after the election, the presidential election in 2016, with the thought that I really needed to do something about the political divide. And the ironic thing is that I had never been political. I was registered as a Democrat, so I just ticked those boxes. And it's been a really amazing journey that I've taken these last 3 years to educate myself better, and really I'm aware of how much I don't know, which is quite humbling, and to find my place in the bridging world, because at this point there is a movement nationwide which really you have to look for because mainstream media is not very interested.
Amen. I agree with that.
I know. So it's there if you look for it, and there are some inherent problems within the movement itself. One thing that I've found, and that is corroborated by some of the other groups, is that there is a left tilt to a lot of the bridging groups, and that there's a lot of reasons for that. But what I've been doing. So there's 2 parts that I'm focused on. That's what I want to let you know. One is how to get more of political representation that is diversity in the bridging movement. And there's been a very good study done by the Listen First project. It's also called the National Conversation Project, which has been started by conservatives. And he talks about a lot of the problems with getting everybody to the table. So I feel really called to take that role too. As I said before, I started out on the left, and now I don't even like to say moderate or centrist because I feel like I'm more an I don't know it. Like now I know enough
like
to know
that.
Yeah, it's because I've been able to zoom out far enough to see what's right about so-called each side and what's problematic about each and what scares each about the other, what separates them. And so often now at seemingly, nonpartisan or bridging events, I often will just speak as the conservative to hold the space in the room. Yeah, and that isn't always well received amongst progressive circles, but part of my personal, journey in this whole thing is to not be afraid, where at the beginning I would just, if somebody called me a conservative or a right-wing ideologue, I would just, have to go in bed for 5 days because my nervous system was so agitated. And now I feel like, no, it's really important. And I do understand enough about the conservative viewpoint because I've studied that I can hold that space. So that's one of my...
Let me ask you one question real quick based on what you just said, if you don't mind. So what you're saying, I really see in my own reality a lot. I see a lot of movements out there, but I don't see as many conservatives coming to the table. And I've been, whether it be through Better Angels or my own things, I feel like I really have to work to get conservatives to come and talk. And I'm not sure I don't think it's they don't want to. I think maybe they're too intimidated to. I don't know. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because about a month, at the beginning of February, I called together what I call the conservative focus group. And I invited about a dozen people who lean somewhere on the right, everywhere from Trump supporters to, more moderate Republicans. And all of them came regularly to bridging events for the last 3 years. So I knew that they understood the bridging movement, and they had a buy-in. They were interested and committed, actually. And it was really interesting. The things that they said, and which is also verified by this thing that Listen First Project did, is that there's a fear that they will be ridiculed, even if it's eye-rolling or, being yelled at, rejected in some way, that they also have a fear, of course I'm generalizing, right, but they also have a fear of being converted, and I do, unfortunately... You
mean people trying to convert them, you're saying?
Yeah, like progressives or Democrats trying to convert, the conservatives to their point of view. And I'm, this is all very well-intentioned. I really am not pointing fingers, but it's none of us like that. None of us like the kind of bait and switch thing, right? And I don't think.
Well, it kind of makes people dig in more, doesn't it, when you kind of do that, right?
Exactly, too. And, part of the problem is if the people, I'm speaking more about people on the left because I know that world. I can't really speak, I haven't been involved in the conservative world for very long, so I don't know it as well. But there are some bridging groups that do want to convert, and with good intentions. If only the conservatives understood, why we're right, we can do things together. But part of the problem is, and what I've learned from studying is that if a person doesn't really think that an opposing point of view could have something valuable to add to the conversation and to a resolution of problems in new ways, that's not going to work very well in the bridging world. So I've had people say to me, again, I live in a very progressive town, oh, it's wonderful what you're doing, and they've never come to my talks. And I know that they're understanding that I have a good intention, but it really is hard to become a bridger. It's not like, let's hold hands.
You're right about that.
I know. You have to dig down deep. I'm going to make I statements. I had to dig down deep to look at my own assumptions and prejudice and fears and look how my own survival mechanisms were making me double down in certain positions. And it's been a whole big psychological experience to come to this place where I'm really much more able to see all points of view. I feel very enriched as a person. I feel like the whole process on a personal level has brought out the best in me. So that's, and that leads into my second point, and what I'm focused on now is what I call the micro part of bridging. So the macro, I would say, are people doing groups and organizations and ideas about how to change policy in a bipartisan way, and there's a laundry list of good things people are doing. However, my personal belief and my experience is that if the people involved, how do I want to say this, haven't explored their own, what I call operating systems, the way that we're wired neurobiologically and psychologically, they won't get very far in truly bridging. So part of one of my projects coming up is a research project that I'm doing with an organization in Portland called SAGE. So it's been put off to the fall now, of course. But
what's it called again?
It's called SAGE, SAGE, which is called the Senior Advocates for Senior Advocates for Generational Equity up in Portland, Oregon. And so I'm going to do a day-long workshop where I talk about all these underpinnings, these personal underpinnings of psychology, cognitive, like we have 188 cognitive biases now that social scientists have discovered that run automatically. Yeah, not that we can address all of them, but I think what I've found anecdotally is people who come regularly to my talks, they'll report back and say, wow, I caught myself in a cognitive bias, a confirmation bias, or I see that I have a double standard about, what's okay for my side, but what I judge on the other side. And those to me, Billy, are like for me, that's the reason I do this. When people come back to the talks and say, oh my gosh, I caught myself in the act. I interrupted these automatic reactions that do not serve. And the funny thing is, Billy, and maybe you found this in your own life, is that all of the stuff that I talk about apply to marriages and families and workplaces. It's all the same thing. Like, I love how you titled this talk, us versus them, not if I have anything to do with it. And, we're wired to do us and them. So all of this work is from the smallest relationship to, the collective.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things. So I'd say, I don't know if you heard this woman. What's her name again? Manji. God, I can't remember. I think you told me about her. Don't label me.
Her name is Irshad Manji. Yeah, don't label me. Yeah.
And how she said it's not an us versus, it's an us and them. That there are always going to be these tribes, but we have to realize we're not against each other. Exactly.
And, to your point where you talk a lot about being American, for some people, being an American doesn't feel like a very positive thing. And I think that really gets in the way of uniting us under one tribe.
You mean America does?
But the people involved, if there's, it's hard for people if they're really if they're feeling negatively about being American. It's really hard to create a tribe of Americans, and then you get into problems of the extremes, which I actually don't want to get too much into here. But anything to an extreme becomes a problem, I think. And so if things are too nationalistic, that can be a problem. But if they're not nationalistic enough, that could be a problem too. Does that make sense?
It does. The thing. I mean, I think that I worry about, and I try to get people in ideas. I feel like the flag has become more of a political symbol than a symbol for our whole country, and I'm trying to kind of change that mindset into what it used to be. And I feel like maybe this time right now with this virus, I think it's been a great thing to create bridging with people, because you see our humanity in all these different people. You have to. You kind of all that political stuff just kind of disappears a little bit.
I'm just going to offer up something else, because that was my hope at the beginning with the whole virus thing, and yet I can see in some circles that it has become politicized and weaponized.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's the both and. Both there's opportunities, which I really can imagine maybe more at a community, local level, but this S&M thing just really drives a lot of what's going on. And like I said, if people aren't dealing with their own polarization within, it's not going to change
easy to fall
so much.
into it too.
Yeah, it's automatic actually. And
it goes back to how we were a long time ago.
Exactly, when there were like saber-toothed tigers chasing us.
Yeah. Exactly. Can you give me, so you were saying there were these examples of things, I forgot to say how many there were, of built-in...
cognitive biases. There's a chart online. If anybody wants to email me, or I can email it to you and you can post it on your site or something. There's a chart of 188 different cognitive biases. And I sometimes joke at the beginning of a talk, and I say, we're going to cover them all in this half hour. But it's for me, it's very humbling and just a good reminder to check in with myself when I'm taking a strong position. Are there one of these biases running? Like one of them that we're prone to is called the availability bias. And that says that if you hear something often enough, even if it's not true, you'll believe that it's true. And they've done studies, social scientists. So when you're listening to your news source, whether it's on the right or the left, when it is one-sided and keeps on repeating the same quote-unquote fact, whether that fact is true or totally true or false or not, we're going to believe it. So it's like this Richard Feynman, the theoretical physicist, has great quotes about, mistrusting your own take on things. And I think there's a way to find a way to keep yourself more honest with asking yourself, are you really sure that's true, as things come up. Mm-hmm. So that's one of my quote-unquote favorite biases that I think.
Do you watch media at all? Do you watch mainstream media much?
No, I don't.
No.
I also find like on the cable news, part of the big problem is they have to fill it up 24/7, so they're often repeating the same stuff
true.
over and over again, and I don't think it's particularly good for our nervous system. So I kind of read enough. I have certain sources considered both on the right or the left, and so I feel I get an overview. And as I started out with, on most things, I just don't know. I think that there's a journalist, Amanda Ripley, whose work I appreciate, who talks about complicating the narrative and zooming out. And when you're only reading a news source that's giving one side, you're not seeing the whole picture. And so that's what she was saying, is she's involved in trying to create a journalism where not only are both sides, reported within a certain article, but the journalist actually points out how complicated it is in a systemic way. So you might think, there's this example that a friend of mine had about complicating the narrative and zooming out, and his daughter worked in Africa, I can't remember which countries, for like a water, they were putting a water system in Africa or in this village or this town, and they were going to put in, irrigation and plumbing and all this stuff. But what they found out, luckily in time, I think, is that the women who were the water carriers, who went to the river to get the water to bring to the village, they were safe from rape because they were so important in the community.
Oh,
so
wow.
I know, and one of my favorite classes that I teach is about the limits of empathy. And this kind of gets into the divide because you've got the stereotype of the divide that the left are bleeding heart liberals and the right are heartless, selfish people. But in fact, if we give with empathy is a very single-focused thing, right? We're focused. That's why advertisers or charities know if you show one kid who's starving, you'll get more money than if you show a village, right? That empathy is like, oh, my God, I've got to help this person. But sometimes it's not the best thing to do. There's a great film that I recommend to anybody who's listening called Poverty, Inc., and it is about
what's it called again?
Poverty, Inc., INC.
Poverty, Inc., okay.
Yeah, and it's about when helping doesn't help, when helping hurts, and we really do need, the vision and the wanting to do good and the practical pragmatism of like, well, let's study this up. Let's make sure we're doing the right thing, like with the water carriers, before we go in and want to fix things. We want to feel better right away. We want to solve these problems right away, but some of the time we do that at our own peril. And, part of how we're wired is we want to have answers right away. We feel much more homeostatic. We feel much more relaxed if we think we have the answer, if we have the answer, even if it's the wrong answer. So we have to calm down and be able to zoom out and think about these, I think.
So I'm curious, do you have many, through these things you've had, these seminars, have you met people on the conservative end that you've become friends with and continued outside of, the seminars and continued nurturing your relationship?
Totally. I mean, for example, these dozen people who were involved in the focus group, I consider them friends. I would do any kind of social thing with them. I've been actually going to Republican events because I haven't exposed myself to that before, and had coffee with people that have different points of view than I used to have. And it's just really interesting to have people that I like as people, and then I just want to listen. It's like, this is another thing that comes up in talks. And one thing that I say before we start talks is that don't be in rebuttal mode while you're listening to somebody. Really listen to understand, to comprehend. It's like studying Russian or something. It's studying something that I don't know about. And so when I can legitimately and genuinely say like my friend Kevin, I'll say, tell me what you think about X. And I just listen as if I'm an anthropologist from Mars. And so it's really, and at this point I don't get triggered. Like, yes, in early days it was like some of these thoughts were like, felt threatening to me. And science shows that our bodies respond to opposing so-called threatening ideas as if they're physical threats. So now that I've managed to calm my nervous system down,
and that's a whole other issue you're talking about there.
That's a whole other issue, yeah. but I think like what I found early in the talk, there were I used to work with Rob Schlapfer, and we worked for 2.5 years on presenting things, some of these background things, psychology and stuff, but a lot about the issues. And what we would find when we present issues without any, what I call front loading about our emotions and our reptile brain hijacking our ability to think, I could see that people would get pissed off. You could see right away with the body language, all of a sudden the arms would cross, the legs would cross, they'd frown. One guy almost hit Rob once. It was really, we both saw that people need to understand their nervous system and their psychology before we can really sit down at the table. And in my view, a lot of the bridging organizations, as good a job as they're doing on different things, they don't usually address that. Some of them do. Better Angels does a great workshop called Depolarizing Within, which I really recommend to anybody if it's in their town. Where was I? Anyway, that's, like you said, it's a really difficult thing to calm our nervous system down, but you know what? It's such a great life skill anyway, whether you're bridging or not.
Just so so basically it took you a long time to where things didn't trigger you, just by the experience doing it over and over and over, is what you're saying. Exactly, and to bring a kind of a buzzword in, to be mindful, to be aware of. Oh, Billy, there were so many times at talks where people would get upset, and I could calm myself down in the moment, but then I'd come home and have to take like 4 hot baths in a row to calm down. And what I needed to do is really talk myself down off the ledge, because it was like somehow I felt it was life or death, like I'm not going to survive this. And I really had to unpack, what do I think is going to happen? So my first go-to place now when I get triggered, because I won't say it doesn't happen ever, is my first question to myself is, am I really in danger in this moment? And the second question I have is there something I need to do in this moment? Because usually this reactivity is like, oh my God, I've got to do something right away, partly to try to feel better, right? And every time I have done that, and I can say every time, the answers have been no. No, I'm not in danger in this moment. And no, there's nothing I have to do in this moment. And it calms me down. It's like, okay, it's the thing is we are wired to want to feel safe. That's, part of homeostasis, feeling like it's okay, I'm not being threatened, I'm safe. So part of the thing, and again, this can happen in a marriage, how can what can I do to self-regulate and calm myself down, no matter what I'm facing? And ironically, it makes it much better for us to face whatever we're facing because we have our wits about us. Yep. Interesting about this whole thing is what you do and what I do, even though we do it differently, it is hard work, and not everybody's going to do it. Because it takes so much time, and a lot of times, like you said, you're playing devil's advocate. You might not even be a Republican, but you're playing that role so you can bring that perspective into an environment that's completely on one side. And it's hard to do that. It's really hard to do that. It's been my experience. But I think the little rewards you get from them, to me, definitely there have been failures with me, but those little rewards, those relationships, those moments in time make it all worth it when you get those little things, because those little things are what's going to bring our country together, those little things that you're doing, those little moments that relationship will get another person to reach out to a relationship with somebody, and so on and so on. And I think that's a go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What'd you say?
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm done. I was just going to add that I think the bridging thing, I think the reason some people don't want to do it, it's a tough job. It's a tough job. But I think the results are worth it. And it just doesn't happen overnight. And I used to think the idea of being neutral, being Switzerland's the easy part. It's one of the hardest roles in the world to play.
I know, to truly be that way.
To be that way. Yeah, exactly.
And to your point, I think, what we're both doing in our work is humanizing the other. And that is the cornerstone. Because once you start dehumanizing, people do all kinds of things to others when they dehumanize them. And that is coming, in my view, from both sides. Yep. And I also want to get back to your point about, not everybody being able to bridge, but also there are people who don't think bridging is a good idea.
Yeah, that's true.
On both sides, and there's been pushback here, in the progressive world on me that, and again, I really want to point out there's good intentions all over the place. But often on the extremes on both sides, it's like, no, our side has to win. And in the best case scenario, I think it's like, and then they'll, in terms of their intention, it's like, and then they'll see that, we really are, our way really is better. And some people are just saying it doesn't matter what the other 48% feel. But, whether you think that or not, I don't think on a practical level, we've been flip-flopping for I don't know how long about, one side is in office for 8 years, doesn't get much done. It's the other side undoes some of the things. There's been gridlock for so long, and the thing is, it isn't, that 51% are going to be able to initiate the solutions that we need to have. And the other part of it is, Billy, and I really think you'll relate to this, is forcing people and shaming people and calling them bad names does not win hearts.
Does not.
And if
100%.
You don't get, and if the change is, even if the government mandated certain things, what people could and couldn't do, if it doesn't get addressed at a more root cause, those things, those tendrils of other points of view are going to come out in darker ways. But changing people's heart takes longer, but it's more sustainable, and you could argue is the only sustainable way.
I had a question for you in this idea, and you make an answer or not. So I'm going to first give you my example. I've had examples. You were saying as some people resist it. Since I moved to the town I am, which is probably the most liberal town I've ever been in my entire life, and I lived in the Bay Area in Berkeley, California, right near there. So I've been in some liberal areas. And when I moved here and I started this movement, I had some friends that just didn't want to be friends with me anymore after I started Hug Out America. They didn't want me talking to Republican people, and it hurt. It hurt that happened. I don't know if that's happened to you at all.
Yeah, I have friends. I don't know how they would feel now, but in the past, it was like they wouldn't come to my talks because they were afraid it would ruin our friendship. And I have a lot of acquaintances, I would say. I don't know what they think or feel about me. At the beginning, I was a lot more concerned about that. And I remember I had like an aha moment where somebody that I was acquainted with, quote unquote, accused me of being a conservative. And I thought, I had this epiphany, like, oh, so that's a bad thing?
Yeah.
We could argue if she called me a neo-Nazi, maybe we could go there, but I'm going, that doesn't make sense to me. Just because I'm a conservative doesn't mean anything, shouldn't mean anything. And in fact, I was recently at this this organization that I'm involved with, and I took the role. I said, if I were conservative, I would take how you're saying as X. And it was a meeting where people were trying to promote bridging. So it was in context. And it was so funny because everyone who talked to me about it later said, well, when you said you were conservative, and I said, well, I didn't say that, but in a way I might as well. And if they do get triggered, which some of them did, that's good grist for the mill. And that would have freaked me out in the past, and now it's like, I'm glad to do it, actually, because I don't think there's anything wrong with being a conservative. I think it's an important piece of the conversation to have. And
I agree with you 100%. I've had a similar experience. I may have told you about it. I go down town when I've given out hugs, and conservatives have a hard time, Republicans in this town. So I created a sign that said Republicans are people too, and underneath it said, by the way, I'm not a Republican. And I had that on the street, and boy, did I get some polarizing response to people. I had a lot of great response, but I had very negative, to where people would just, not just verbal, but physical threats, and even coming up and doing physical things to me, where I think, we got to realize, like you said, being a Republican or being a conservative is not like being a racist or whatever. It's a perspective that over half the country probably like, right? And they just see the world a little different. Right. And this is one of the big problems with generalization and what's called in psychology splitting. Splitting is making things either all good or all bad, all right or all wrong. Yep. And again, we're wired up to perceive things that way until we, what I call, do a manual override and start doing it differently. Billy, are you aware of the Hidden Tribes study that they did, I think, in 2018? No, but I'm not aware of a lot of stuff. So that's nothing. Oh, that's okay. I'm going to send you a link, but okay. It was a very well vetted study, and what they found is that only about 15%, that would be, I think, 8 on the left and 6 on the right, were really running the hyperpolarization, and they counted about 85% as being the exhausted majority. Oh, so, interesting. So I'd like to say that, my organization, Building Bridgers, is a voice for the exhausted majority. But, right? But this is the thing, because the news is and social media is so hyperpolarized, we don't get the other voice, which is the majority, is that most people are more mixed on their, they're not ideological. They're more like, they might be a little bit more conservative about immigration and a little more liberal about, gay rights. I'm just making stuff up here. But, and the other interesting thing is the year after Hidden Tribes did that study, they did another one called the Perception Gap. And I don't remember the numbers, the statistics, but, the majority of people on both sides deemed the other side as more extreme in their views. So you've got this perception gap. So, like, some of the things I say in my classes, like, watch your generalizations. Like, learn to use modifiers like some Republicans instead of all Republicans, or right? And the other thing is realizing, that things aren't all good or all bad, not all black or all white. And so how do we bring nuance into our thinking, and also, living with uncertainty and paradox and all of that, which are signs of psychological maturity. Yeah. I agree with you. I did I don't know, I'm kind of more, I'm not as, I don't know, as talented as handled as you. Sometimes I handle things too bluntly. But I put this thing up probably about a year ago, and I said, why is it not okay to call Muslims terrorists, but it's okay to call Trump supporters racist and sexist. I mean, they're both huge groups of people. And it opened up a whole can of things, but it's a really valid point that I think we have to realize, that we can't be put in this tribe, and you've got to see that other side, like you're saying. You can't say all people. You have to say some, like you're saying. You might, so you tone it down a little bit, and I think it's key to do those things you're talking about, where we talk about it. And I think in my conversations, I don't even really usually get in politics. I usually speak humanity. I speak about their kids, about music, about food, about their football teams, about all those things, you know. And those kind of are the best bridges I see. But with what you're doing, I think it's key that you have to talk about the things that you're talking about, though.
Well, I think so, because I think, and I don't know if I said this already, but what I do see missing in the bridging movement is what I call this education part of education about ourselves and how we run, how we operate. And so part of my way is, and to address what you said about your bluntness, I think there's times where bluntness is called for. It's like knowing, it's like that intuitive knowing of what's most effective in the moment, what's optimal. And my way in general is instead of triggering the defense mechanism by, like I said before, if Rob and I talked about issues too early, people would get defensive and then they'd stop listening. So I think by this self-education, it kind of softens the terrain so that the defense mechanisms don't come up right away, so that we can go deeper into topics in a gentler way. That's my approach. And and I like to think that I meet people where they are. Like I've been inviting people, because I haven't been doing a lot of public presentations right now, but I've invited everyone on my emailing list, if they want to know more about bridging, buy me a cup of coffee. And, some people I can see it's not going to go very far. So I will listen to them more than try to tell them something. And then with one person who was somebody I knew, she's more on the progressive side, and we've been having these beautiful conversations. And she's so psychologically savvy that if I would say something that would trigger her, she'd say, "Wait a minute, I'm having a moment of cognitive dissonance," which means when, it's just so people understand. It's like when some new idea, some new piece of information rubs up against your points of view or your cherished points of view. But she'd say, "Wait a minute, I'm having a moment of cognitive dissonance. Give me a moment." She took some deep breaths and she said, "I really want to understand what you're saying." And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Like she knew enough how to calm down so she could listen and get under her own defense mechanism. So I think by being, and it sounds like you found that too, you get a sense of where you can meet somebody. And I think it's brilliant when you talk about, you do the first step, which is this human interaction of what we all have in common, and establish that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
in regards to that, one quick story I want to give you. I don't think I've told you that was a huge opening thing to the humanity aspect to me is I go down to Hilton Head Island in the summers with my kids, and I go down the beach and I give out buttons on the beach. And I have a bag, and I give out 50, and then I turn around and go back home. And I give them to everybody, and someone give a hug. Think about the beach is you meet every kind of person you can imagine, because everybody likes the beach. So I meet every kind of political perspective. You can just meet everybody. And I'm going down the beach one time, and I see this guy way out in the water fishing, and I'm like, I'm just going to ride my bike out to the surf. So I rode it through the surf, and I couldn't pedal anymore. So then I'm pushing my bike basically in 3 feet of surf, going towards this fisherman. He's looking at me out of the corner like, who's this crazy fool coming over here with this bike? And I went to him, and I just started talking fishing. I said, what are you using to catch? What you catching? I was telling about what I was catching there the other day, and I noticed he had a Clemson hat on, so we started talking about Clemson, which led into our families. And we're sitting there talking probably 30 minutes. We were talking about all different things. And I looked down at my watch, and I noticed it's early in the morning. I noticed I need to get back because I have somebody watching my kids while I'm gone. So I'm like, I got to go. It's been great talking. He goes, before you go, let me get over and meet my family. So we walk into the shore. I'm looking at him and not really looking what's in front of me, and we get right in from his family, and they have towels that are Confederate flags and basically white power things lining the beach. And I pretty much can chat about anything and just blah, 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 but I was speechless at that point. And I just looked at the ground, and I shook their hands and said hi to all them. And then I went down the beach. I was kind of like blown away. And then I was like, wow, if I can connect with that person who has very different views than me, and we have no clue whatsoever of where they are, that we have that bond. Imagine what we can do with people that we're not even that far away from, right? So that was a big moment for me that saw that there's this humanity, regardless of where people don't like to hear that, where it's a racist or anything else. We have more in common with everybody than not. It's just our reality. We have the same wants and needs and desires as anybody. I don't know if you've had any experiences or stories like that extreme.
Well, I have a couple. I have two stories that I really like. Rob and I had done a year-long class on building bridges, and where we met once a month for 5 hours. And there was like that. We started with 20 people, probably 3 or 4 conservatives. We ended with 10, but the 3 or 4 conservatives did stay in. People didn't know. They knew they were mixed, but they didn't know what they were at the beginning. But there was one man he knows who he is. He's giving me permission to share this story, where he really had a hard time with Trump supporters. He just couldn't understand and really generalized in a negative way. And so, but this man loves animals. And he was watching like a nature show where it was about how humans rescued animals in situations of great danger to themselves. And he said, as one of them, there were these guys in MAGA hats who took a bucket off a bear's head. And he had an aha moment. Because
that's
he
great.
said, I got, it was great, and that was like one of my I can die happy moments. My work here can be done if I died right now. And the other story like that, well, similar to that, is in one of our talks, we talked about, and Brene Brown uses this as an example in her book, Braving the Wilderness, that if you think, calling Hillary Clinton a bitch, you should be equally as affronted if people call Kellyanne Conway or Ivanka Trump the same thing. And there were other examples. And at the Q&A, this woman raised her hand, and she was teary, and she says, I have a true confession. She said, I called those women those names, and I will never do that again. And so it's like this very right? Like that, because I do think what happens is once someone has what I would call that kind of breakthrough on a small level, all kinds of things start opening up because it puts a chink into the closed system of how we all get caught up in our own closed system until we let new information in.
I'm really glad to hear that story because I had a similar story, and the conclusion of that, my story has not come to conclusion. Who knows what will happen? But I go to a church that basically says everybody's welcome. Welcome all. Welcome all. And I've basically switched churches 3 or 4 times based on people saying they're a welcome all place. And this last one I went to, they actually changed the doctrine of their service to say welcome all political leanings. So I actually joined the church. I got my family. I went to it. I hadn't joined a church in a long time. I was really excited about it. But I've been noticing the sermons, and they told me, they're glad I was a part of the sermon and stuff like that. Well, they had done a sermon where they were talking about, and it done several times, about Donald Trump, and they were basically attacking him and saying all these bad things about him, and they actually brought it into the children. So the children were repeating these things, and I just I got to say something about this. I got to say something about this. I'm like, and I said, I know you're a welcome all church, but if you really want to be a welcome all church and you want to get people who might be possible Trump supporters, I don't think you should bash Donald Trump every sermon, because what if I got up there and started bashing Hillary Clinton? How would you feel about that? Would you feel welcome in that church? Would you want to come to that church? I doubt it. So, it was a Zoom conference last weekend, so it was probably 100 people, 50, 78, I don't know, a lot of people saw it, and I think they were kind of deer in the headlights that I would do that. So I don't know what's going to happen with that conclusion. If it's good to hear the conclusion that you had, I'm hoping something like that will happen with my church, because I feel like we got to realize our language, like you said, it goes both ways.
Right.
We're feeling that on both sides of the spectrum.
Right. And, Billy, this is my experience has been that sorry, my mind just went blank. Oh, that these seeds that we plant, we won't know. If we're lucky, we'll know. But I do think that of all those people who heard what you said, it's going to land with someone. Even if it's in a year, they're going to have an aha moment, or it's going to plant a seed that we can't know about. But it's like, for me, the ability to speak up when I see something and do it in the cleanest way that I can, so that it doesn't, cause people to double down or to feel like I'm in some way shaming them. It's like, just be as clean as I can. And to that point too, the signs that everyone has, like everyone is welcome. It's like I want to do a sign that says, and you've done things like this, including Republicans, Republicans are welcome too. I mean, that's the thing about the inclusivity movement. And Irshad Manji in her book, Don't Label Me, talks about this a lot.
Yeah, she does.
Real inclusivity is real inclusivity, not just with the people you agree with. And that's what's hard about this, until it's not hard anymore. And I feel like both you and I have reached a place where it doesn't take that. It's become more second nature, I would say.
Yeah. Let me ask you another question. So, will you have this kind of mindset of always what I call what you think, standing up for what you think is right, even though the whole room may be seated, right? Have you always been like that in your life, or throughout it, where you would take these chances where other people might not say anything or do something at all?
No, I have been a conflict avoidant all my life. I'm 64 years old, so but I'm going to use the word calling. The calling to do this work, what I woke up with on whatever that was, November 9th, 2016, has been so strong that it's almost like, girl, if you want to do this, you're just going to have to, get inner muscle. And there's times where I had to take a month or two off the work because my nervous system was so frayed. And now I'm much sturdier, and it makes me emotional to see how far I've come.
That's great. That's really cool to hear. I like to hear that.
Yeah, so I'm learning to be more outspoken and it doesn't have the same rub. Like I mentioned, like in these different progressive circles where I will voice this other point of view, I don't get nervous anymore. Even one woman got triggered, but I told myself she's not attacking me, and she has a lot of passion about this. And if I can reinterpret it instead of as a threat, it's like, wow, yeah, this brought up something for this person. It's fine. It's good. And the more this is the problem. Go ahead.
I would just say, and it all came, this whole like change of mindset and putting yourself out there came from just the election and Trump becoming elected, pretty much?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah, and the divisiveness. The
divisiveness from that.
Yeah, and not that it wasn't already there, but it really, like somewhere intuitively, I thought this is going to be a really divisive thing for the country, no matter which side of the aisle you stand on. And,
did you have friends at that point that were separated because Trump was getting elected? That happened when that that personally that.
Not.
No? Okay.
Not real close in. Like anecdotally, I had heard about people. But more that, part of what I say too is that, because people will often say to me, well, what about the administration? What about Trump? I said, look, I'm playing the long game. This is like, how do we build a new, better citizenry? Because administrations will come and go. And they'll do damage, all across the board. But how do we connect? And this is what you're doing, one hug at a time. How do we connect to create something that's going to carry on in a better way going forward? Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
And I think it has to be, one by one. I think it's a personal thing.
I agree. I think that's key. The one-on-one thing is, like, I try when I do these conversations is to make it one-on-one is key to me, because we lose that. Once you even put one other person in the conversation, at some point, I sometimes bring people in to talk on the show, but, I wanted to get one-on-one with you and let people hear what we're discussing. Like, and I was curious, were you the one that recommended that book to me, Love Your Enemies?
Yes, that was our textbook for our year-long class.
I love that book. Love it, Marla. I love it. I've given that book to about 100 people.
That's awesome. And just so the listeners know, Arthur Brooks is the author, and he is a Roman Catholic conservative who used to head up the American Enterprise Institute, which is a conservative think tank. But he's really a bridger. He's a great bridger.
Yeah, I want to get him on the show. I don't know if I'll ever be able to pull it, and I don't know if I told you that there's a story in the book I think you know about, where Newsom, the guy who's the Make America Great guy, and Hawk, the Black Lives Matter guy, come together. Yeah. They basically come. I think the Make America Great, they're having a big speech, and he invites Hawk up on the stage to speak to the crowd, and they basically have a hug-out moment, right?
Yeah, totally.
In real life. And that's pretty amazing stuff that would happen, those two polar things. And I actually got an artist to draw a painting of that representation because it was his book. It moved me so much, and I highly recommend anybody out there to read that book. I'll try to put it up for people. I recommend everybody read it because it's just an amazing book. And that idea of, loving your enemies is a tough one, but I think you're so great from it. You get a lot of rewards from doing that very thing.
Right. And I know that, I do take, I don't know what word he could have used, and I know that it's an expression, love thy enemies, but, I don't look at other points of view as my enemies anymore.
Yeah, me either. Same thing.
So that's like another step beyond. And by the way, there's a great clip. I don't think it's more than 8 minutes with Hawk Newsom and the white nationalist guy. how they came together. I'll send you the link too, and you can.
Oh, please send me that. Yeah, definitely.
It's just beautiful. And Hawk Newsom, the Black Lives Matter guy, got a lot of pushback. A lot of pushback from his own side. That's another thing.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, that doesn't get talked about so much, is that when you are trying to bridge, sometimes you get more pushback from your own side.
Oh,
where
yeah.
the sides are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's.
Yeah.
I was
you
just
there?
writing it down. Yeah, I was just writing it down real quick. Just that idea is just what they're doing is so cool, and how I'm nothing I was curious about. I know you're on social media a little bit, but if you had, and everybody has these things, I feel like people when they're on social media, I have what I call keyboard courage, where they just say whatever comes to their mind, because they're anonymous, nobody can see them, and then and Facebook just kind of brings out this side in people. Have you had any conversations with people where you may have had a bad conversation, but you stuck with it to try to get something, to try to bring it back to civility or anything like that?
I personally haven't. I don't have the stomach for it. I've been attacked once or twice on Facebook, and I found it very distressing and really hard to, I don't know. I didn't find a way to deal with that on social media. So it's tough, and I think it's just such a poor way to communicate. There is a quote that I posted, though, by a man named Charles Eisenstein, who is, somewhere on the progressive left. But he said, it was beautiful. It was like every time you are filled with hate or, judgment, and you're ready to send something and press send, he said, don't do it. Don't press send from a place of hatred.
Yeah.
And again, this is a really good personal exercise. Like, for me, it's like if I don't have something that's bridging to say online, I don't say it. And I certainly don't share things. And I don't share things that I don't know are well-founded. So everyone can take responsibility for the problem if they get smarter about what they're posting and sharing on Facebook.
Well, and here's in response to that. So I've been the kind where I have posted things I shouldn't have posted. I'm just going to admit out front, I said some bad things on there I shouldn't have said. And the way I realize that, honestly, and I don't know, for some people, sometimes even in the heat of that moment, I don't even realize it. I have to look at my Facebook page the next day and say, wow, this should not be here. So I try to write stuff that I'll be happy with from days and days to come. Because when you're in that moment, I'm just saying there's that humanity thing when you do that. But when you said something, maybe go back to your page and take all those things off. I've taken off tons of stuff off my page when I got heated about some particular issue that I shouldn't have gotten, that happened to me. Mm-hmm. If you kind of do that thing, you go back to that page and make sure somebody goes through that page, that they'll want to go through the whole page, and you'll be happy with whatever they saw about you on that page. And that's what I try to do with my page. I don't know. There's a, I don't know. Do you know a guy named Michael Franti?
Yeah.
So he's super positive. He has a page. If you ever want to be you want to be brought back up, join his group and go to his page. It's all positivity, the whole thing, all the way down, from people all over, every kind of person you can imagine. Trying to emulate that kind of idea, I think, is key. I commend you for doing that, not hitting that send button or whatever, because I sometimes make that mistake and do that and then regret it and like, oh gosh, never should have done it.
Like never should have sleep on it, before wait 24 hours. But there's Michael Franti has a great song somewhere back there about right and wrong and sides. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is it a recent
I'll
one?
try to find it.
Is it a recent one? Yeah.
No, I don't think it's recent, but I'm going to find it and I'll send you the link.
Yeah, he's Ohio Lagoon. I did have one. So you were saying you don't do the Facebook thing. I was just curious. It is real hard to do it, and I've tried really hard to people that come at me on Facebook. If I stay civil the whole time, and I just try to stay in the conversation with a civil all the way down. And I had one woman that we have been in major. She is very, I would say, us versus them, and very polar, and she attacks me in a lot of ways. But for some reason, I'm going to try to stick with this relationship, try to sew it and make it a better situation. And you know what? You know how we've come together. Now we're actually communicating on a good level, and she's seeing more humanity in me or whatever. Is through this virus. Come together on that idea, and we're not coming to blows anymore. And most of my friends say, why are you spending your time on this? Why are you working on this? I'm like, it's good practice. It's good practice for me to do it online, to have these conversations where I don't hit that send or whatever. So it's interesting to do that stuff, but it's and I love you, Marla. I always like how you have not taken a side where you're like when I was working on the Tulsi campaign, you're like you stuck. It's like, no, I'm not going to go on a political route at all. No, but I'm going to stay in this middle ground. And I so respect that you did that, and that's why I know you have success in what you do because you're so good at staying that.
Oh, thank you. It was a little hard for me to say no, but I wanted to be honest with you. And I've just had that. I've run into that problem before, and it's really important to just be neutral about certain political things. Yeah. But
the political stuff's kind of exhausting.
Well, yeah, that too. But you're inspiring me to maybe be a little bolder online because having admitted that I'm a recovering conflict avoidant, there's still parts that I just kind of have to pick and choose where I'm willing to get nervous. So yeah, I think I respect that. I admire you for doing that. You understand, I never have a problem getting into conflict and confrontation with people when I feel like I'm doing the right thing my whole life. That's why I was curious if that situation was with you. With me, growing up in the South, I had to do it a lot because a lot of my friends were black, and I got in a little battles with my other friends trying to protect them and stuff and through my life. But it's interesting to me that you weren't like that before, but you were so moved to completely change the way you are. That's admiring that you do that, and I was glad to hear that. Yeah, but it's been great talking to you today, and I love hearing about what you're doing. What you got going in the future? You said you had something coming up. Well, I'm doing a couple of film nights with a group called Crossing Party Lines, which is a national organization. They do brilliant work. So I'm doing a film night tomorrow night that's sold out online. And there is space in one on Tuesday the 14th next week. So you can go onto Meetup and look at Crossing Party Lines. And
where is it again?
Well, it's nationwide, but if you just go on Meetup and look for Crossing Party Lines,
okay,
yeah, meetup.com, and then this other research project we put off till September, and in the meantime, I'm working still on getting more conservative voices represented in the bridging world. So there's nothing really specific now with the lockdown and everything.
It's tough.
It is tough, but I really invite anybody who wants to have a conversation with me to email me or call me, and we can kick things around.
That's the reason I started this station, because this radio station, I was planning on this summer and in this spring taking time off and going to visit the other states to hug somebody in every state and listen, open the minds and listen to people's different perspectives. And then this hit, so I was like, man, I can't do anything. I'm going to be stuck in my house. I got to find some way to at least wrap my mind around people. So I get how you feel, and you got to try other avenues. You got to get creative in the ways you reach people. And we have to rely on online so much now.
Right, and I'm grateful to be the recipient of your creativity.
Well, I'm happy to have you. I'm glad to have you. I want to tell you one last thing. I don't know if I told you. The thing that I'm working on is I have this thing called One Love Art. I'm about to start. You might be interested in hearing about this. I have a friend I met in New Orleans through a good friend of mine, just by chance. We went to school there, and I was supposed to meet. I was going to a jazz fest with a group of friends, and I flew in a day early to spend time with her. Well, she had a business meeting she thought was coming back on that day. Well, she misbooked it, and she was not there when I got there. So I was in this apartment with this guy I'd never met for a whole day. And we actually connected, and this guy is night and day for me. I grew up in country club environment in the South. He grew up in inner city. He's an artist. I mean, the things he does, he's had the things that he's dealt with are totally different than him, but we just connected on this level of trying to bring the country together. Even though we were so different, we walked along the Mississippi River for only an hour talking about things, and I was talking about my life and his life, and the humanity connected us, and we started this project. Basically, you see my logo of the red and the blue coming together, called One Love. We have art projects we're working on together where I give my design skills and my writing skills, and he puts his art skill, and we literally have pieces we're putting together. And our first piece we're doing is called Humanity, and all the proceeds are going to go to the city of New Orleans to fight the coronavirus, because he lived there his whole life. I went to school. It all plays a special part in our life. In New Orleans, it's getting hit harder than any other place. I think there's a couple places, but it's so small, and the mindset is so laid back there that it's just ravaging New Orleans. He actually had to leave the city just a while ago because it got so bad. But we're doing this piece, and we're excited about it. It's going to be, like I said, like a One Love Art, and trying to bring everybody together in all these art pieces, because I think art is key to do that, get this kind of stuff we got going.
Well, that's beautiful, Billy. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's not launched yet. I just wanted you to tell you about it first because, we're kindred spirits in so many ways in the way we're doing it. Maybe at some point I'll get to meet you in person when I head out Oregon way, and I'm sorry I didn't get to meet you last time, and hopefully, we'll be through all this stuff soon enough. And I think it may have some positive aspects when we're done with this. We will be able to see the humanity in each other and be able to see past this tribalism through the politics you talk about with all your people. So.
Yeah, I have great hopes, too, for that. And I think, on the local level especially.
Well, I extended my radio show for a long time today because I knew I'd want to talk to you for a long time, and I'm glad I did. So I look forward to one day seeing you. But it's great to at least talk to you voice to voice, and thanks again. And good luck getting through this. Have you been in quarantine at home yourself, or?
Yeah, I've been pretty much staying close to home. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you by yourself? Or you have family, or?
Well, actually, it's funny because I was living alone, but now two of my sons are back here,
Oh,
and
that's great.
my stepson is coming back, and there's a lot of interesting family dynamics happening, and so it's really sweet to be back together like we are. Very sweet. So there are good things coming out of this situation for sure.
Are they from the Oregon area, or do they live close by?
One lives here, and one lives in Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
That's great to have your kids back. Mine are still pretty young, so they get on my nerves more than anything. I'm ready to have them out of the house most of the time. But I'm sure that'll change once they leave. I'll be begging them, please come back.
Exactly.
Right now, I'm forced to keep them in here for a while. So.
Yeah. Well, try to make the best of it and the most of it, because they'll be gone soon. And
I try to remember that. I try to remember that more than anything, even if they, are driving me nuts, But I mean, it's a good thing that we can stay at home, and like I said, we're blessed that some of us can. I mean, some people have jobs where they can, or schedules where they have to be out, So it's good that we can do this. So, all right. Well, have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon, I hope, and take care.
You too, Billy. Thanks again.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, y'all. That's about it for the day on Hug It Out America Radio. Good to have Marla in to talk to us. I extended our hour to an hour and a half today, and we're probably going to go almost to that point. I want to let y'all know that coming up Wednesday, we'll have Chris, who's a Springfield artist I told you about, is come and talk about how he uses art to get people out of their bad situation. He lives in pretty much a gang-ravaged neighborhood in Springfield, and I met him, and we had some talks and stuff. And then I have a guy who's a great musician, great guitar player, is writing some great songs. Got one called Can't Touch This. He's going to play on the show. He's going to play and explain that to us and say what he's been doing in his life. And then next week we got more people, but those are the people we got lined up this week. And hope y'all have a good day, and try to stay safe and not drive each other too crazy if you're in a quarantine. And remember this bonding moment, like Marla said, to take advantage of it while you got, because later on you might not have it. So till next time, Hug It Out, America. Y'all have a good day. Bye-bye.